Hello out there. Hope everyone in the Northern Hemisphere is enjoying their summer and staying cool. And thanks for tuning into another episode of the Rocker Dog Podcast, the show that talks to musicians about their dogs. I'm your host, Tim Dill, coming to you under the constant surveillance of my dog, Charlie. And today we welcome New York rocker Des Rocs, whose sophomore album, Dream Machine, will be out August 25th on Sumerian Records. And this is his anxiety-ridden, yet super sweet, rocker dog.
My dog is named Ellie Rocco. She is a 3-year-old wheaten terrier and poodle mix.
Okay. So, funny enough, I always go to Instagram to kind of get information of the artist and their dog. And I was tipped off on you from someone named Heather and said, you should talk to Des. He's got this great dog. And I go to your Instagram and I think there's only one video clip. And I think that, and it might not even be Ellie, but it looked like a doodle. So does that mix kind of look like what's your dog look like?
Yeah, I mean, you put anything together with a poodle and they always have like a similar vibe. But she is kind of golden. She's tiny. She was supposed to be 40 pounds and ended up being like 19 pounds.
Okay.
So she's just tiny little scrap of a dog. She kind of looks more like a wheaten, I think, than most people would think. And she's got a lot of personality crammed into a very small package, like me.
I bet. And what's the history behind getting her? What was kind of the impetus? How old was she, did you say? 4?
She's 3.5 now. And okay. I had done a lot of work in the city with some local rescues, specifically Muddy Paws, which I'll shout out again at the very end. And because I'm touring, it's very tough to have a dog. So right as COVID was hitting, actually a couple months before COVID, I didn't realize, and this was this real silver lining, I've always wanted a wheaten terrier or a poodle. I love both breeds a lot, and decided to combine them both and pick up Ellie.
Okay. And what led you to that, not knowing the pandemic was going to shut things down and knowing you're a busy touring musician, did you have a plan? Did you have people in place to take care of her when, the need would arise?
Yeah, there's a large network of family here, and pretty much on both sides of my family, going back for 100+ years, it's just all New York. So everybody is super, super local. And there's a large network, and I come from a really, really large dog family. I always grew up with 2 large dogs in the house at any given time since I was like probably in 2nd grade. Yeah, mostly rescues, mutts. We had 2 golden retrievers at one point as well. And, dogs and everything dog related is just like in my DNA.
Oh, very interesting. And did you grow up in New York or one of the boroughs? Like where are we growing up?
I grew up in Long Island, like right outside the city. And currently I'm talking to you from my studio in Brooklyn, and I live across the water in Manhattan.
Okay. And of any of those dogs you grew up with, does any stand out in any particular way?
Oh, they're all incredibly special. I mean, a lot of them have a lot of serious issues being rescues and coming from really kind of unimaginably tough backgrounds. We had a dog named Grace who, like, for the first 2-3 years we had her, you couldn't even like go near her. She would just like hide in the corner. And it's crazy how much a lot of these dogs just need a lot of time and patience to readjust to what we would consider a normal housing situation.
Right. And I'm sorry, I was just going to move into like living and working in and around New York with a dog. I lived in New York for 25 years, and, my story goes, I was always the dog guy without a dog. Living and working in New York, I didn't have the space, I didn't have the time. So cut to years later when I escaped from New York I say escape from work. I love New York more than anything. When I moved away from New York, have a larger space, have kids, I get a dog. But I know the challenges of New York. So what kind of challenges are you faced with, living and raising a dog in New York, if any?
I think New York is like one of the least dog-friendly places on the planet and one of the most dog-friendly places on the planet at the same time. And that kind of yin and yang and opposing viewpoints is also like a greater symbol of New York itself, where it's like it's the best place in the world, it's the worst place in the world. But basically, I think the biggest hazard is just the cleanliness of the streets. And when
Right.
you get a dog, you just start looking down at the streets in a way that you never used to. And you see glass, you see all these sorts of things. Like, the amount of things I've had to rip out of my dog's mouth that are just like traumatizing. I mean, at one time we were in Union Square and she dug up a humongous dead rat.
Oh my
And
God.
it was like 7:45 in the morning, and I started my day trying to persuade my this tiny puppy to drop a rat that was like half the size of her own body. And then that wasn't working because it was too valuable of a prize. And then just getting in there with my bare hands and grabbing it out and everything that entailed, like that to me is like if you have a dog in New York, you're going to have many experiences like that, you know?
Do it on that topic. Do any other stories similar to that pop to mind?
Oh, so many. I mean, she's grabbed things that are just even too graphic to even say on this podcast. And too disturbing and traumatic for me to even bring back up again that I've had
Sure.
to take out with my bare hands to the point where I'm like, I would consider just like walking around with latex gloves at one point just in case I had to do this because especially during COVID, if you rip something really disgusting out of your dog's mouth, there's really like no establishment to go into to wash your hands afterwards. So
Yeah.
you just have to like live with it on your hands until you can get back to your apartment. And it's just like gross. But and that's how you start your day. So it's
Right.
like it's the most New York you ever heard in your life. Also, just like New York dog park culture is pretty intense. Other stories are just like when I moved uptown and was closer to Central Park, like the greatest thing in the world is the off leash hours, because the park is completely off leash before 9 a.m. So I can just go there every morning and do like an hour walk off leash, and it's like the greatest thing in the world.
That's great.
Yeah.
Speaking of off leash, is Ellie trained? Have you trained her or has she been with a trainer?
Yeah, I was pretty intense with training and it's something that's very important to me. So her recall and her off leash recall is absolutely excellent. However, she has a lot of serious issues. She's not okay with most other dogs. She's still not great on leash and doesn't love walking on leash. Has a lot of anxiety, which is sort of the downside of wheaten terriers and poodles, like just tremendous amounts of anxiety and nervousness. But that pendulum swings just as far in the other direction, where she's also the sweetest, most loving dog I've ever met in my entire life. And we are so, so incredibly attached in a way that is so incredibly unhealthy, for both of us. It's
Right.
like you have emotional support dogs, like I'm her emotional support human. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I view it. I should walk around with like a special band on my arm or something. That so yeah, she is just like she's incredible. She's my girl. So
Well, it's funny you bring that up, the emotional support. I often talk to artists about, the idea of an emotional support dog. But what I've gathered from you and what I've learned from you just by reading and listening to some of your music is that a lot of it comes from a positive place. Like you're a positive person. Is that true?
depends on the day.
Okay. Okay. I don't want to read too
Yeah.
much into it, but I was going to just kind of support what you're saying that you're more the support for your dog than vice versa. And I'm sure your dog gives you as much support as you want, but it's more the case where, your dog does have anxiety and, you're there for her.
Yeah, I mean, but it's definitely a two-way street. I just even after a lifetime of dog ownership and living with dogs, I am to this day just ceaselessly amazed by the bond between a man and a dog. And by man, I mean mankind. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Hmm.
between humans and dogs. It is mind-boggling to me that you can live with a wild animal and like, have a routine. Like you can have like they have more of a curmudgeon-y 85-year-old routine than you do. They're like, all right, let's go to bed. You know what I mean? It's like it's 10, let's go. And like, try to get you to go to sleep. It's like it's miraculous, like what we've established and this connection to nature, which is it's really like the only one of its kind. You know what I mean? It's in the animal kingdom. It's crazy.
Yeah. It is funny sometimes when you just try to step back and look at like, why do I have this? I know our weights are the same. My dog's 20 pounder, but it's like, if you have a 40 or 50, my sister's dog, 70 pounds, this 70-pound furry creature randomly walking around your house, seemingly at home, totally comfortable. It becomes very abstract when look at it through an alien's eyes, I guess.
It's mind-boggling. It really blows my mind. Even like I just think about it all the time. It's crazy and how adaptable they are. And it's like, today I want to go for a 6-hour hike. Dogs down. Today I want to just sit at home and watch TV all day. Dogs down. Like whatever you are willing to do and want to do, they will accompany you with little question. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy how unconditional like their love and companionship is.
Yeah. Is she ever stubborn, on that point? Is there ever a time when she does want to do something or want to go out and is kind of dictating what the day is going to be like?
Yeah, I mean, she's a brilliant dog. She's too smart. She's too smart for her own good, which I think is why she has a tremendous amount of anxiety. So during the pandemic, I actually trained her to use those buttons
Oh
where
yeah.
you can really communicate. And I had to stop because she was so chatty and so demanding that it like drove her insane, knowing that she had a way to tell me definitively, like, I want to play ball right now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So she would
Yeah.
go over and she would look at me and she would just go, ball, 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 ball. And I would come over and I would say no. And then she would look at me again. She'd say, ball, ball, ball. You know what I mean? And it would drive her nuts because she just knew that she had this like ability to so clearly communicate something that she so badly wanted, but that I was not going to give her 24 hours a day. And I had to like undo that training and take away the buttons, which is
That's so
it's
funny.
kind
Oh
of
my
crazy.
gosh.
Yeah, crazy to think
Uh,
about because like she's constantly wanting to play.
Yeah. Do you happen to follow that? I think it's How Stella Learned to Talk. This woman, who I think she's a child psychologist, but she adapted some of the things she learned from teaching children who had verbal challenges. She adapted it to her dog and did the whole system you were talking about, where you've got the buttons to say, out, play, ball. I've been following that, and it's so funny to hear you describe your experience because on Instagram, her experience is nothing but great. I mean, the dog is so articulate and so patient, and but it's very funny to hear that your dog was insistent
Yeah,
on certain things.
I mean, she loves to play. She has severe separation anxiety. She has a lot of serious anxiety issues. And then if you combine that with her intelligence, it can be pretty tough sometimes. But yeah, I got hip to the buttons from an Instagram account of a dog named Bunny, who's a
Okay.
sheepdoodle. And yeah, Bunny is like brilliant. But Bunny also has a lot of anxiety issues as well. But it's definitely worth checking out.
Well, it's interesting when I did think you had a doodle, and I guess it all kind of, you do have an oodle of some sort.
Oodle.
I immediately go to that article a couple of years ago in the Times where the guy who more or less invented it by breeding the first, it was a Labradoodle. He backtracks and says, I created a monster. And I think what he means by that is, he created an industry where it's abused by, these backyard breeders and puppy mills. But to your point, you keep saying, there's a lot of anxiety, there's separation anxiety. That's kind of what he says is like these dogs, they're quirky and fun loving, but they don't like to be left alone, and they're crazy in a sense. But
Yeah.
again, they're talking about our dogs. I definitely see that with my dog. It sounds like you're getting the same reaction.
Yeah, they have a tremendous amount of issues, and unfortunately, I wasn't really, not that I would do anything differently, but I wasn't really aware of many of them beforehand. But it's funny, like we expect our dogs to be these perfect things and behave perfectly, but they have just as many flaws as we do. And our ability to love them and help them through those issues and manage those issues, that's where they really need us because we put them in circumstances that are so foreign. I mean, like putting my dog with severe anxiety into an extraordinarily crowded elevator in Manhattan at
Yeah.
7:30 in the morning while everyone's going to work. You know what I mean? Like this is such a big ask of them to live these lifestyles with us. So the more patient we can be and understanding, it's just very important. And what I think genuinely gets me upset is when people do get breeds like that and just like throw them into a house with very little training and very little structure and then expect them to excel when really you have to be really patient and be cognizant of the fact that if you're going to get a dog that is this beautiful, this cute, this loving, that there might be a lot required of you in order to make sure that dog is happy and safe.
Yeah, for sure. And that can be said about every dog. I think, when you do work with rescues, you see that so much of their inventory is, returns. People are
Right.
returning dogs that they, either say it's too much trouble, I didn't realize what I was getting into, which is, sad to say. I wanted to circle back on one thing you mentioned was the dog park dynamic. Can you talk a little bit about that, especially in New York? Like, what kind of experiences have you had?
In New York, it's just a social scene. You know what I mean? It's really popping, and I definitely have like a really good lay of the land of all the dog parks that were definitely below 14th Street for a while when I was living down there. And yeah, it's kind of gross. It's kind of small. It's usually pretty crammed, but you meet a lot of characters and a lot of fun people. And I mean, I remember during COVID, like we would like bring wine to the dog park and just like hang out and with friends and let the dogs play and do their thing and just kind of get drunk and waste the day away. You know, when there was really nothing to do and nowhere to go. And
Yeah.
right when they reopened the dog parks because they closed them for a while, which was like the worst thing ever. Um, but yeah, dog parks are in New York are like they are a staple of the city for sure.
And is it ever troublesome? Like you said, there's such a dynamic of different people and different breeds. Are there people there that kind of, the rookies or the people like you gotta watch your dog. You can't let
Yeah,
there's a certain decorum that people maybe ignore or are just naive to.
you get the whole spectrum of responsible dog owners to extraordinarily irresponsible dog owners and people who will bring like a 2 year old to the dog park, which is a terrible idea because you never know what issues any dog might have and you never want to roll the dice. Yeah, it's a whole spectrum and you just get like the whole cast of characters. And yeah, a lot of dogs are not okay with dog parks. Like at my dog used to be great in dog parks. Now she can't go into a dog park because she's just not okay with most dogs. And they have these big personality changes around 2 years old. A lot of dogs that you could be like, what's the problem? You used to love dog parks, and then now they're not comfortable with other dogs. So yeah, but the time when I was going to parks very often, it was a scene. You met a lot of really fun people.
Yeah. Did you ever get recognized?
Not in New York, like once in a while, rarely, you know what I mean? Like also, even if you do get recognized in New York, people aren't gonna really say anything to you. You
It's
know what I
the
mean? Like,
it's the secret nod.
yeah, it's just like, you might take a look, be like, oh my God, that's so and so, and then you just kind of keep walking. Like that's what I love about New York is that like even famous people can just kind of like put on a baseball cap and just blend in to the world. And for me, like, every once in a while, maybe someone says something, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
It's nothing crazy.
Yeah. I often ask, if a dog is on brand with the artist, and in certain cases, I'm talking to heavy metal guys that have, tiny dogs or, there's a little juxtaposition. There's not so much with you, but I was curious to ask that same question because I know, your music's been described as like dynamic and manic and unorthodox and risky, So is your dog kind of on brand with you as an artist or just it's two separate things? There's private life and then there's an artist.
Well, I think both are true. There's private life and then there's an artist. And also, I think my dog is I mean, we're like such kindred spirits in this weird way. We're both like fiercely, fiercely determined and tunnel visioned on certain things we want to achieve and do and bring into existence. We both have very intense wills, and will go so far in one direction to achieve something at the great detriment of our health. Like for example, like with Ellie, like the separation anxiety is so intense, like she could potentially hurt herself trying to like get to me. She would like
Hmm.
jump over a fence just to like get to me, and in that sense, that kind of anxious determination is definitely on brand for both of us, I think. And she's also, she's like super scrappy too, which I think I relate to.
Okay. With your other dogs you grew up with, do you see that also? Is this the closest dog you've ever been to? The most, I guess, in sync relationship, or can
Oh
you?
yeah, I mean, I've loved all my dogs, but like we were in, I mean, I spent every waking second with Ellie,
Yeah.
so especially for 18 months during the pandemic, when she was only like 3 or 4 months old when it started. So yeah, I've never had this kind of like extremely deep connection with a dog before.
Yeah. And does she have free reign of, your apartment? Is she allowed on the couch? Does she sleep with you? Does she follow you to the bathroom?
Yeah, everything,
Yeah.
every waking second. Yeah,
Sounds like we have the same dog.
yeah, no limits. Yeah, and they also like they're pack animals. Like they don't like to be alone. So
Yeah. How would you describe a perfect day for Ellie?
I think waking up in bed, not in a crate, and going for a 4 hour hike upstate, and then just passing out in the car ride home.
Is she good in the car?
Yeah, she's good. I mean, every once in a while she'll get some motion sickness, and I can hear when it's coming, so I can maybe like pull over or try to drive differently. Um, but yeah, every once in a while she'll be not great in the car, but she doesn't like fear it or anything, which is good.
Has she been to the ocean?
Yeah, she went to the ocean several times, and I was playing fetch with her in the ocean, and this is like the most Ellie thing ever. And I would throw the ball into the water, and she would run in and grab it. But I noticed that when she was swimming, her mouth was like open, and I just think I was like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you swimming with your mouth open?" And later that night, she gets like terribly upset stomach, gets super, super sick. I take her to the vet the next day. She had basically poisoned herself with salt water and
Uh,
was saltwater poisoning and was drinking the seawater while she was swimming and got really, really sick. So I stopped throwing the ball into the water.
have you had any other episodes where you've had to rush to the vet or had any, illnesses or broken bones or torn
Yeah.
ACLs
Oh, for me or for her?
for her?
Yeah, she's had a lot of health problems for a young dog. Uh, she's scrappy, but she's not tough. I'll say that.
Right.
Um, she got routinely spayed. She got very sick from her spay, even though I spay and neuter your dogs, please. But something happened. I don't know what. Maybe some reaction to the anesthesia. She got
Right.
extremely ill, and it was very scary for a couple of days. She got bit by a dog in a dog park when she was a puppy, which was really bad. You want to talk about non-responsible dog owners in dog parks? She got just like out of nowhere attacked and didn't see any wounds, but like 2 or 3 days later, it blew up and got really infected. And I guess
Uh,
there was a picture, and that was a whole vet emergency. But she's happy and healthy now, so that's all that matters.
okay. Has she caused you any injuries? I just recently spoke to an artist she was chasing her dog and ended up breaking her foot. But when I asked about the tornado sale and you said, "You talking about me?"
Oh no, no, she has not injured me, so that's good.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. Well, I wrap up every show with what I call the zoomies, and that's the last five rapid fire question. Not really rapid, but let's go there. So,
Yeah,
question one is: you kiss Ellie on the mouth?
of course.
Okay, good answer. That's your answer I'm looking for, but I don't always get. Question
Yeah,
two is: she licked anyone well known? Any fellow musicians? Any back to the New York and everyone on the streets famous for something?
she has attacked the dog of Fox News personality Jesse Waters.
Nice.
Um, I was walking down the street and saw him with his dog, and they just went right at each other, and she fucked him up pretty bad. She's licked a lot of musicians and people in New York City.
Has
She
she ever been to
actually
your gig? I'm sorry. Has she been to a gig before?
No, she's never been to a gig. I think that's like cruel to bring a dog to a show that's not an emotional support dog or medically necessary because it's unless you have proper ear protection.
Yeah.
Um, she has been pet by like a lot of famous people before. I'm just trying to think of who it is because there's been people who have like, I got to get back to you on that. I got to email you. I got to ask around because there was one that was like, oh my God, it's so crazy that so and so is petting Ellie.
Oh yeah. Totally. Totally
Yeah,
follow up with that.
yeah, yeah.
So question three, I know she doesn't go on tour, but say she did go on tour, what would she insist being the tour rider for her?
Balls, tennis
Any kind of
balls.
balls, tennis balls?
Yeah.
Okay. Very funny. Question four is: do you use a dog voice to speak to her or give her a dog voice?
What do you mean? Do I embody her voice?
Yeah, do you either speak for her in a certain voice or speak to her in a, high pitch or cartoon or, sweet voice?
No, I just treat her like a human. I just speak to her like a human.
She's
Yeah.
a peer. She's
Yeah.
an equal peer.
She'd be like, why you sound so dumb? You know what I mean? She's too small.
And you don't give her a voice.
No.
Okay. Last but not least, and you mentioned it, I always ask if there is a dog organization you want to put a spotlight on or give a shout out to, who would that be?
Muddy Paws NYC.
Okay. And have you been doing some work with them? It sounded like you
Years
mentioned.
ago. Many
Okay.
years ago.
And
Yeah.
was that just dog walking or, volunteering or how so?
It was just standing on the corner of Union Square with a couple dogs that were up for adoption.
Okay.
You would just kind of stand out there with them and field questions and applications.
Perfect. All right. Well, anything to promote, now that we're entered summer and, heading towards July and August?
Yeah, I got my first single out from my first single from my new album is out now. It's called Never Ending Moment, and then the whole album is going to be coming out in late August. So get ready for it.
Excellent. You gonna be touring through the summer or touring after the album's released?
Yeah, I just wrapped the whole tour with a band called Bad Flower, and I'm doing a bunch of kind of one-off festivals right now, and a whole lot more to come very soon.
Awesome. And the best place to follow you and catch up on what you're doing and where you're at?
Yeah, on most socials, I am Des Rocs, DesRocs.
All right. Well, Des Rocs, thanks for taking the time and sharing Ellie with us. And best of luck to you and Ellie and everything you do in the future.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Hey, my pleasure. All right. Thank you, Des Rocs, for sharing your girl Ellie with the world. Des is currently on tour through the end of July, and his new album, Dream Machine, is out August 25th and available for pre-order at desrocs.com. That's DesRocs.com. The organization Des chose to highlight is Muddy Paws Rescue, whose mission is to build and support a thriving community of dog-loving humans dedicated to ending unnecessary euthanasia of companion dogs. They do this through shared learning and education, direct life-saving, and continuous innovation. To adopt, foster, volunteer, or donate, go to muddypawsrescue.org. Thank you for lending us your ear. As I've said on every episode so far, we are on Instagram at Rocker Dog Podcast, where you can see pictures and videos of our guests and their dogs. And now we're on Threads as well. But I have a feeling that might be short-lived once the honeymoon is over. But that remains to be seen. But check us out anyways. We're at the same handle, Rocker Dog Podcast. And don't forget to join us again next week to hear about a rocker who moved his dogs from the wintry weather of Chicago to the balmy year-long temperatures of Florida. So set your subscriptions for that. All right, I gotta go get cooled off. Stay safe out there, everybody, and we'll see you next week.